Hello and welcome to another video of DAX Wednesdays. In today's episode, we're going to talk about two DAX functions, MAXX and MINX. These two DAX functions belong to the aggregation family of DAX functions. Now, before we head into the demo, I just want to explain to you few concepts regarding MAXX and MINX. A while ago, I had made a similar video on sum and SUMX where I explained to you the difference between an aggregator function and an iterator function. An aggregator will aggregate the values that belong in a column, whereas the iterator function will take one value, store in its memory, then head into the second row, take one value, store in its memory, and so on. This is the X or the iterator part of the function. And once it has gone through all the rows, it will do a sum of all the values it has in its memory. And then we saw the capabilities of these two functions, how we can recreate, for instance, the same result that we had from sum. Now, in case of MAXX and MINX, this diagram is a tad different. Let me explain. The capabilities of the functions max and maxx is shown in the diagram over here. Now, the max function, we can determine using the max DAX function the maximum value of either a column, or we can compare two scalar values or two expressions and find the maximum value between the two. Now, maxx can recreate only the aggregator part of the max function and it cannot do any comparison. That's why, as you can see in the diagram over here, maxx cannot perform the comparison between two values. Now, before we head into Power BI, I'm just going to explain to you what we are going to demonstrate as examples. First of all, we're going to have a look at maxx function and the data types that it takes in, the arguments that we can use. And secondly, we will be having a look at recreating, first of all, the result that we have from max function, which is one over here and one over here. And once we have done that, we will have a look at few other examples in which where we can have a look at the remaining capabilities of the maxx DAX function. One more thing to remember is whatever we talk about max and maxx, it also applies for min and minx. Now let's switch to Power BI for the demo. Now in Power BI, we are going to use this data set where we have 6 columns. First of all, a column called number with numbers in it, text with text in it, date with date in it, and 3 other columns which are quantity, unit price, and total cost, which are all of data type number. In our report view, we have 2 report pages. First of all, the data types and the capabilities. First of all, we're going to demonstrate which data types that we can use in the argument of the maxx DAX function. So we'll click on the new measure option over here. Now type maxx is equal to, once again, maxx. First of all, we're going to check the 2 arguments that the DAX function takes in. First of all, it takes in the table name. Our table name is table maxx minx. Once it's done, it's asking us an expression. So for an expression, we can put in the column name. For instance, I can put in the number column of our table and we'll close the bracket. Now Power BI didn't prompt us with any error, so now we'll add the measure that we just created to our table visualization. It has returned to us a value which is 98. Now what is 98 over here? 98 is the largest number in this column. First of all, it has taken the value of 5 from the first row, then 26 stored in memory, 42 stored in memory, 67 stored in memory, and then once it has all the values, it has moved on to the max component of the DAX function where it returned to us the maximum number of all these values. The logic behind maxx is a tad different. It is an iterator function as compared to max. Now it has taken in number. Let's see if it can take in text. If I had to change column name over here and say okay, now you see it has accepted the text data type, returned to me zebra, which is from A to Z, Z or the largest alphabet. So it has returned to me the word zebra. Let's see what happens if I type in date type, which is date. Now it has written to me 6th January, which is the highest among the 6 dates provided. Now with this, we understand that MAXX can take in the data type number, text, as well as date. Now let's check what happens if we type in MINX instead of MAXX. So now you see it has written to me the smallest date or the lowest among the 6 dates provided. For the text, it will return to me alpha, which is A, and for the number, it will return to me the minimum of all the numbers that we have in the first column. Just remember that MINX and MAXX are iterative functions. They function differently as compared to max and min. So this was the first part of our demonstration in which we had a look at the different data types that MAXX and MINX can take in. Now moving on to our second part, I will just remove our measure from our data model. We'll move on to the second report page, which is capabilities over here, and we already have a table visualization with the 3 columns: quantity, unit price, and total cost. Now going back to our presentation, now what we're going to do is first of all we're going to get a result by using the MAXX DAX function, which takes in the column name as argument. In this case, I'm going to use the total cost as the column. We'll put in new measure. I'll put in number max, and the column name table max MINX total cost. Now since Power BI didn't prompt us with any error, so this DAX function is perfectly fine. I'll add this DAX measure to our table visualization. So this DAX function has returned to us the value of 280, which is the highest among the 6 values over here. Remember, this is an aggregator function. Now what we're going to do is we're going to recreate the same result that was provided by the example that we just saw using the MAXX iterator function. Let's go back to Power BI. I will add a new measure this time around, call it number MAXX1. Type in MAXX, provide the table name. Now it's asking us for an expression as the second argument. So this time around, we're going to type in the table name followed by the column name and close the bracket. So we have only added the column name this time around. Let's see what result or answer it provides to us. I'll add the measure to our table visualization, and now you see it has returned to us the same result as we saw in MAXX, but this time around it has used an iterator function called MAXX, in which it went through each value in the total cost column. For instance, 180 from the first row, it stored 180 in its memory. Then it went to the second row, it stored 45 in its memory, and so on. And once or the iterative part of the function is performed, it has moved on to max, in which it went through all the values it has in its memory to find out the maximum value, which is 280. Now we were able to recreate the same result that we saw with max, which was this part B. Now we're going to move on to the part C, in which we can do much more with MAXX as compared to max. Remember, max only takes in the column name. We can't do much after that. Whereas MAXX, let's see what all things we can do. Now, we have the total cost over here, but there is another way in which we can get this value. That is, if we multiply quantity by unit price, we multiply, for instance, 2 by 90, we will get 180. Let's see if MAXX lets us do that. We put in a new measure called number max underscore 2. We type in MAXX, put in the table name, which is table max MINX, and this time around we will multiply the quantity column by the unit price. We close the bracket. Let's see what happens. Now Power BI didn't prompt us with any error. This means the DAX function is okay. I will add this measure to our table visualization, and you'll see it has returned to us the same result, which is pretty obvious. 280 is the maximum number among them all. But this time around, what it has done is, first of all, it has taken the first value of quantity from the first row, multiplied it by the first value of the unit price column, and whatever that product was, it stored in its memory. Then it went into the second row, performed a multiplication between the values of the second value of quantity and the second value of unit price. The product was saved in memory, and so on. And once it has performed the iterator component of the DAX function, it has moved on to the max part, in which it returned to us the maximum among all the products that it saved in its memory, which is pretty cool. Just imagine all the possibilities, all the operations that we can perform using this concept. Now let's see what all other things that we can do. Let's go to table view. I will add, for instance, a new column over here, and let's call it discount. Use a function called ran between and provide values, for instance, between 2 and 10. So now what we'll do is we're going to add a discount to the total cost and then find out the maximum among this discounted total cost. Go back to report view. I will add another new measure this time around. Let's call it number max underscore 3 is equal to max x. We'll type in the table name, table max min x. As the expression, now first of all we'll take in table max x min x total cost column, then we'll multiply that by this expression, which is 1 minus table max x min x discount divided by 100. We close the bracket like this one more time. So now it will include the discount value and provide us the total cost after discount. Now I will add this DAX measure to our table visualization. Now an interesting thing has happened. MAXX has performed the calculation for us. So rather than adding a total different column of total cost after discount, MAXX was able to perform these calculations in the background and then on top of that provide us the maximum value of them all. So once again, what has happened is it has taken in from the first row the total cost, which was 180. Then we have a product between that total cost and, let me add the discount column over here. And then it has included the discount that it needs to apply. It performed this calculation in which it provides the percentage of total cost after discount. Once that product is saved in its memory, it has moved on to the second row, done something similar, and so on. And once it has performed its iterator component of its DAX function, it has moved on to the max part of the function, in which it returned to us the maximum value after discount. You can see the values are different for the maximum of the total cost, whereas maximum of the total discounted cost. So this works. Now for our final example, I'm going to show you what else we can do with MAXX. Now I'll type in number max x underscore 4 is equal to max x, open the bracket. Now we were only manipulating the second argument of the DAX function, but with MAXX we can also manipulate the table itself. I can, for instance, apply a filter to the table. Let's say filter. Now filter takes in two arguments. Again, I will mention the table name, which is table max x min x, the filter expression. Now for the filter expression, let's consider the rows where the quantity is less than, let's say, 6. Table max x min x quantity is less than 6. I'll close the bracket. Now we are back in the max x DAX function, where it is asking us the expression. For instance, this time around we'll type in the total cost and close the bracket. Now let's see what happens if I were to add this DAX measure to our table visualization. Now you'll see it hasn't taken into consideration the final two rows because the quantity is above 6. So it has ignored, the filter has ignored these bottom two rows first of all, and then it has moved on taking in values of from the total cost column one by one, saving in its memory, then moving on to the max part of the DAX function, where it has provided to us the maximum among these four values which are stored in its memory, and it has provided us the answer, which is max x and min x. Now one more time, if you remember, I said that these concepts apply to min x as well. So one by one I'm going to change all of them to, let's say, min x. You see it has provided us the minimum among the four. Now let's change it for the previous columns that we had a look at. Now see, for the next column it has provided to us the minimum value, which is 42.75. Let's change it for max x2 now as well. Once again, the least value, the smallest value, and finally for MINX 1 and number min, and there we go. So it has written to us the minimum or the smallest values of among the column or the values that it had stored in its memory. So just to recap what we saw in this video, we had a look at MAXX and MINX functions, which are what we classify or categorize as iterator functions. We had a look at the capabilities, all the data types that it can take in its arguments, and what are the capabilities of the MAXX and MINX functions as opposed to max and min. Just remember, there is this small portion of comparison where we have to compare between two values, for instance, which is the maximum or between 5 and or 6. MAXX cannot do these kind of comparison, but it can iterate in each row and do much more than max and min lets you do. So that was all for this video. Let me know in the comments of what you thought about this video. Do not forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next video.